The billionaire CEO runs into his poor ex-wife at a Rolls-Royce showroom, with triplets he never knew existed. "Your tie is crooked," the little girl said, reaching up with small fingers to straighten it. The gesture was so unexpected, so innocent, that David felt something crack in his carefully constructed armor. He knelt there, surrounded by million-dollar cars, staring into the face of a child who had his chin, his nose, a child who couldn't possibly exist. Yet here she was, along with two siblings who bore the unmistakable Pierce features. 7 years, he whispered, looking up at Alicia. "You kept my children from me for 7 years? I sent letters, David. Made calls. Your lawyers returned everything unopened." Alicia's voice was steady, but her hands trembled as she gathered the children closer. "You made it very clear that children would only complicate your perfect life. Have you ever seen someone realize in a single heartbeat that all their success means nothing? That moment when a person who has everything discovers they've had nothing that truly matters? I'm Mr. Harrison, and welcome to Timeless Love Tales. If you've ever wondered what happens when life gives someone an unexpected second chance, stay with me for a story that might just change how you measure true wealth. Hi, my beautiful sisters. Before we continue with the story, I want to take a moment to acknowledge those of you who, like Alicia, have carried the weight of motherhood on your shoulders alone. The strength it takes to raise children without support, to build a home filled with love when resources are scarce, to choose dignity over dependency. This is a quiet power that often goes unrecognized. Some of you watching might see yourselves in Alicia's journey, making impossible choices, protecting your children while nurturing their spirits, and creating beauty from struggle. Remember that your worth was never defined by a man's recognition or financial support. The richness you've created in your children's lives through your presence, your sacrifices, and your unwavering love is the true wealth that no balance sheet can measure. As this story unfolds, know that it's often a woman's silent resilience that teaches the most profound lessons about what truly matters in life. Your journey matters, your choices matter, and the love you pour into your family creates ripples that transform generations. Now, let's return to our story of discovery and redemption. David Pierce stood frozen in the gleaming Rolls-Royce showroom, his perfectly tailored Brioni suit suddenly feeling too tight across his shoulders. The polished marble floor reflected the showroom lights like stars, surrounding the luxury vehicles with an almost ethereal glow. This was his world, a world of uncompromising excellence and effortless wealth. But 15 feet away, examining the interior of a Phantom with 3 identical children at her side, was Alicia Brooks, the woman he'd walked away from 7 years ago. The triplets looked about 6 years old. His age if he'd had children, which he didn't, or so he'd thought. Alicia hadn't noticed him yet. She was kneeling beside one of the children, a girl with copper curls that matched Alicia's own, pointing out something on the dashboard. The other 2 children, another girl and a boy, pressed close to their mother, their faces alight with wonder at the handcrafted luxury surrounding them. David's mind raced through calculations he didn't want to make. 7 years since the divorce. 9 months of pregnancy. That would make the children 6, maybe 7 years old. Conceived during those final, tumultuous months of their marriage, when everything was already falling apart. When he told her children would only complicate their already complicated lives. A cold realization washed over him. She'd known. She must have known she was pregnant when he'd handed her those divorce papers. And she'd said nothing. As if sensing his presence, Alicia looked up. Their eyes locked across the showroom floor. Her expression shifted from surprise to something harder, more guarded. She whispered something to the children and stood, smoothing down her simple dress. Nothing like the designer clothes she'd worn as his wife. "David," she said as she approached, her voice steady despite the tension evident in her shoulders. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Clearly," he replied, unable to tear his gaze from the 3 children who were now staring at him with undisguised curiosity. "Were you planning to tell me?" Alicia's chin lifted slightly. "I tried. You made it quite clear you weren't interested in hearing from me." "About children, Alicia? My children." His voice rose slightly, drawing the attention of a nearby salesperson who quickly found somewhere else to be. "You told me repeatedly that children weren't part of your plan," she said quietly. "That Pierce Industries needed your complete focus. That a family would only hold you back. That didn't give you the right to what, David? Raise them alone after you made it abundantly clear you wanted nothing to do with me or any potential children." Her voice remained low but took on an edge he remembered well from their final arguments. "You had your lawyers block my calls, return my letters. After the third attempt, I got the message." Before David could respond, the three children appeared at Alicia's side. Up close, the resemblance was undeniable. The boy had David's eyes, the distinctive Pierce gray that had marked his family for generations. Both girls had his straight nose and determined chin, though softened by Alicia's features. "Mom?" the boy asked, looking between them with a perceptiveness that startled David. "Is everything okay?" Alicia's expression softened as she looked down at her son. "Everything's fine, Marcus. This is—" She hesitated, glancing at David with a question in her eyes. David felt something shift inside him as he looked at these three small faces. Faces that carried his bloodline, his legacy. Children he hadn't known existed until 2 minutes ago. "I'm David Pierce," he said, kneeling down to their level in a gesture that surprised even himself. "I'm an old friend of your mother's." "You look like me," Marcus said bluntly, studying David's face with an intensity that was disconcerting in a child so young. One of the girls, the one without Alicia's copper curls, stepped forward. "Your tie is crooked," she said, reaching out with small fingers to straighten it. The gesture was so unexpected, so innocent, that David felt something crack in his carefully constructed armor. "Thank you," he managed, looking up at Alicia with questions he couldn't voice in front of the children. "Madison has an eye for detail," Alicia said, her voice softening slightly. "Maya is our artist, and Marcus never misses anything." She placed protective hands on her daughter's shoulders. "We should go. We were just looking. Obviously." "Why were you in a Rolls-Royce showroom?" David asked, the question coming out more accusatory than he'd intended. Alicia's expression closed again. "Maya's doing a school project on dream cars. The dealership was kind enough to let us look around." She checked her watch. "And now we're going to be late for their piano lessons." "Piano?" David echoed, another piece of his past clicking into place. Alicia had always wanted their children to learn piano, like she had as a child. "Yes, piano," she replied, already gathering the children. "It was nice seeing you, David." "Wait," he said, reaching into his pocket for a business card. "Take this, please." Alicia hesitated before accepting the card, tucking it into her purse without looking at it. "Goodbye, David." As they walked away, the girl called Maya turned back, offering a small wave that pierced David's chest like a physical blow. He stood rooted to the spot, watching as Alicia ushered his children, out of the showroom and into a modest sedan that was worlds away from the vehicles surrounding them. Only when they had disappeared from view did David realize he was still kneeling on the showroom floor, surrounded by luxury he'd taken for granted, while the most valuable thing he could have possessed had just walked out the door. Triplets. Richard Kwan, David's CFO and oldest friend, nearly choked on his scotch. "You're telling me Alicia had triplets and never told you?" The evening skyline glittered beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows of David's penthouse office, the city lights a testament to the empire he'd built. But for the first time in years, the view failed to fill him with satisfaction. "She says she tried," David replied, staring out at the urban landscape that had been his true home for the past 7 years. "After the divorce. And you never knew? For 7 years." Richard set down his glass, the crystal making a sharp sound against the marble desk. "That's hard to believe, David. You have people who monitor everything." "I told the security team to keep her away," David admitted, the words tasting bitter. "I was angry, hurt. I thought a clean break was best." "So clean you didn't know you had 3 children?" Richard shook his head. "What are you going to do now?" David turned from the window, his reflection fading as he stepped away from the glass. I don't know. I've spent the last 7 years building Pierce Industries into what it is today. I've made billions, acquired companies across 3 continents. And now I find out I have 3 children who don't even know who I am. You could leave it alone, Richard suggested, though his tone indicated he didn't believe David would. They seem to be doing fine without you. They were looking at Rolls-Royces but driving away in a 10-year-old Honda, David said sharply. Alicia was wearing a dress from a department store. They deserve better. Is that what this is about? Providing financially? Richard studied his friend carefully. Or is it about the fact that you've never gotten over Alicia? David shot him a warning look. This isn't about Alicia. It's about my children. If you say so, Richard replied, unconvinced. But tread carefully. You can't just walk into their lives with your checkbook open and expect everything to fall into place. David's jaw tightened. I need to know them, Richard. They're Pierce's. They're Brooks, Richard corrected gently. That's the name on their birth certificates, I'm guessing. They've lived their whole lives without you. This isn't a hostile takeover where you can just change the letterhead. David picked up his phone, scrolling to the private investigator's number he kept on speed dial. I need to know more before I approach Alicia again. Where they live, where they go to school, what their lives are like. Richard sighed, recognizing the determined set of his friend's jaw. Just remember, these are children, not assets to be acquired. And Alicia isn't one of your employees who has to follow your directives. I know that, David snapped, then softened. I need to make this right. And if Alicia doesn't want you in their lives? David's expression hardened. That's not an option. They're my children too. If you've ever had a moment that changed everything you thought you knew about your life, hit that like button and share your experience in the comments. Sometimes the most profound discoveries come when we least expect them, and I want to hear your stories of unexpected revelations. Alicia's hands trembled as she closed the apartment door behind them. The triplets had already scattered. Maya to the small desk in the corner where her art supplies were neatly arranged, Madison to the bookshelf, and Marcus to the window seat where he kept his collection of model cars. 7 years of careful planning, of building a life separate from David Pierce, and it had all come crashing down in a chance encounter at a Rolls-Royce dealership of all places. She should have known better than to take the children somewhere so connected to David's world. But Maya had been so excited about her project. Mom! Marcus appeared at her side, his gray eyes, so like his father's, studying her face. Who was that man really? Alicia sighed. Of course Marcus would be the one to ask. At 7, he already showed the same sharp perception that had made David such a formidable businessman. Let's talk about it after dinner, she said, buying herself time. I need to start cooking. He looked like me, Marcus persisted. And he knew you, not like a regular friend. From across the room, Madison looked up from her book. He was wearing a Breguet watch, the Classique collection, probably the 7147, based on the dial. Alicia stared at her daughter. How do you know that? Madison shrugged. I read about watches last month. His was worth about $30,000. Maya joined the conversation without looking up from her drawing. He had sad eyes, like in that painting you showed me, Mom. The one with the man who lost something important. Alicia felt a headache building behind her eyes. This was why she'd never been able to keep the truth from them for long. 3 different perspectives, 3 different ways of seeing the world, but all equally perceptive. Sit down, she said finally, gesturing to the small living room sofa. All of you. The triplets exchanged glances, that silent communication they'd had since infancy, and settled onto the couch, looking at her expectantly. Alicia took a deep breath. That man was David Pierce. He's your father. The silence that followed was broken by Madison. The David Pierce who owns Pierce Industries? The one on the Forbes list? Yes, Alicia confirmed, not surprised that Madison knew this. Her middle child absorbed information like a sponge. Why doesn't he live with us? Maya asked, her artist's eyes wide with confusion. And why haven't we met him before? Marcus added, his expression guarded. Alicia sat down across from them, choosing her words carefully. Your father and I were married a long time ago. We divorced before you were born. He didn't know about you. You didn't tell him? Marcus's voice held a note of accusation that made Alicia wince. I tried, she said softly, after you were born, but your father was very busy with his company, and he had made it clear before we divorced that he didn't want children. He didn't want us? Maya's lower lip trembled. No, sweetheart. Alicia moved to sit between them, putting an arm around Maya. He didn't want children in general. He didn't know about you specifically. There's a difference. But now he knows, Madison said, her analytical mind already working through the implications. Will we see him again? Alicia hesitated. I don't know. That's up to your father. He'll come back, Marcus said with certainty. He looked at us like we were a puzzle he needed to solve. Out of the mouths of babes, Alicia thought. Marcus had just perfectly described David's approach to every challenge he'd ever faced. And now she and the children had become his newest puzzle. The question was, what would he do once he'd figured out the solution? The file on Alicia Brooks and her children landed on David's desk the next morning. He'd given his investigator less than 24 hours, but the man had delivered as always. David opened it with a mixture of anticipation and dread, feeling like an intruder into lives that should have included him from the beginning. The facts were laid out in clinical detail. Alicia Brooks, née Mitchell, 36, elementary school music teacher at Westside Academy, a private school known for its arts program. Modest salary, supplemented by private piano lessons given from her apartment on weekends. Residence, a 3-bedroom apartment in a decent but not upscale neighborhood. Mortgage payments current but substantial relative to income. Children, Maya, Madison and Marcus Brooks, age 7. Born 6 months after the divorce was finalized. All enrolled at Westside Academy on partial scholarships. Maya showed exceptional talent in visual arts, Madison in mathematics and science, Marcus in music and debate. No romantic attachments noted for Alicia since the divorce. Financial status, stable but limited. No significant debt beyond the mortgage but minimal savings. College funds established for all 3 children but modestly funded. David closed the file, a complex mix of emotions churning inside him. Alicia had built a life for their children, a good life by most standards. They were educated, talented, apparently well-adjusted. But they could have had so much more. Should have had so much more. His intercom buzzed. Mr. Pierce, your 10 o'clock is here. Cancel it, David said abruptly. Cancel everything today. Sir. His assistant's voice held rare surprise. Family emergency, he said, the words feeling strange on his tongue. Reschedule everything. 30 minutes later, David parked his Bentley outside Westside Academy, feeling oddly nervous. The investigator's report had indicated that Alicia taught music from 10:30 to 11:45 on Thursdays. The triplets would be in their respective classrooms. The school was impressive despite its modest endowment, a converted mansion with well-maintained grounds and a reputation for nurturing gifted children. The kind of place David might have chosen himself, though with his resources, the children would have attended somewhere with even more prestige. At the front desk, he straightened his tie. I'd like to see Alicia Brooks, please. The receptionist looked up, recognition flashing in her eyes. Mr. Pierce. Of course. Do you have an appointment with Ms. Brooks? No, but it's important. Family matter. The woman hesitated only briefly before picking up her phone. Ms. Brooks, there's a Mr. Pierce here to see you. A pause. Yes, that Mr. Pierce. David could imagine Alicia's reaction on the other end of the line. She'll be right out, the receptionist said, offering him a seat in the waiting area. David remained standing, too restless to sit. When Alicia appeared 5 minutes later, he was struck again by how little she'd changed. Her copper hair was shorter now, falling just below her shoulders instead of to her waist as it had during their marriage. She wore simple black pants and a blue blouse, professional but a far cry from the designer clothes she'd worn as his wife. "David," she said, her voice carefully controlled. "This is unexpected. We need to talk," he replied. "Privately." Alicia glanced at her watch. "I have a class in 10 minutes. Cancel it." Her eyes flashed. "I can't just cancel a class because you decided to show up unannounced. These children have been preparing for a recital." David felt a flash of irritation, then forced himself to remember Richard's advice. This wasn't his company. He couldn't simply issue directives and expect compliance. "When can we talk then?" he asked, moderating his tone. "I have a free period at 1:30, she said after a moment's consideration. 45 minutes. "I'll be back then," he agreed, turning to leave before pausing. "Are they here? The children?" Something softened in Alicia's expression. "Yes. Maya has art, Madison has advanced mathematics, and Marcus is in debate." "They're in different classes?" "They're triplets, David, not clones. They have different interests, different strengths." A hint of pride crept into her voice. "The school has been wonderful about nurturing their individual talents." David nodded, filing away this information. 1:30 then. As he walked back to his car, David found himself wondering what the children were doing at that exact moment. Was Maya painting? Was Madison solving equations? Was Marcus constructing arguments? These were details he should have known from birth, milestones he had missed while building his empire. For the first time in years, David Pierce questioned whether he had made the right choice 7 years ago. Alicia couldn't focus on her music class. Her students noticed her distraction, exchanging glances as she lost her place in the score for the 3rd time. "Let's take a break," she finally said, setting down her conductor's baton. "Practice in pairs for the next 10 minutes. As the children broke into groups, Alicia stepped into the hallway, needing a moment to collect herself. David's appearance had shaken her more than she wanted to admit. 7 years of carefully constructed independence threatened to crumble at the mere sight of him. She leaned against the wall, closing her eyes briefly. What did he want? Money wasn't an issue. She'd never asked for a penny beyond what the divorce settlement provided. But she'd built their life without his help, had raised 3 remarkable children who didn't need his billions to thrive. Would he try to take them from her? The thought sent a chill through her body. David Pierce was accustomed to getting what he wanted, and he had the resources to wage a legal battle she couldn't hope to win. By 1:30, Alicia had worked herself into a state of barely controlled anxiety. She waited in the small conference room, straightening papers that didn't need straightening, rehearsing arguments in her head. David arrived precisely on time. Punctuality had always been one of his non-negotiables. He closed the door behind him, his imposing presence immediately filling the modest room. "Thank you for meeting with me," he said, the formality of his tone at odds with the intensity in his eyes. "Did I have a choice?" Alicia replied, then immediately regretted the defensiveness in her voice. David sat across from her, his expensive suit a stark contrast to the worn furniture. "I want to know them, Alicia." "They don't know you," she said carefully. "They've built a life without you in it. A life that could be so much better with my involvement." His tone was matter-of-fact. "They're my children too." "Biologically, yes." Alicia met his gaze steadily. "But parenthood is more than DNA, David. It's being there, every day, through fevers and nightmares and first days of school." "I wasn't given the chance to be there," he countered, a flash of anger crossing his features. "You made that decision for me." "I tried to tell you," Alicia said, her own anger rising. 3 times. Your lawyers returned my letters unopened. Your security team blocked my calls. After the 3rd attempt, I got the message. You could have tried harder. This was my children we're talking about. Children you explicitly said you didn't want. The words burst from her with unexpected force. You made it abundantly clear that children would interfere with your precious 5-year plan for Pierce Industries. David fell silent, unable to deny words he had indeed spoken during their final arguments. "I was wrong," he finally said, the admission clearly costing him. I didn't understand then what I was giving up. And now you do? Alicia couldn't keep the skepticism from her voice. I want the chance to find out. His expression softened slightly. They're remarkable, Alicia. Even in those few minutes I could see that. You've done an amazing job with them. The unexpected compliment caught her off guard. They are remarkable, she agreed, each in their own way. Tell me about them, David said, leaning forward slightly. Please. Maya is our dreamer, she began, a small smile touching her lips. She sees beauty everywhere. Her art teacher says she has extraordinary talent. Not just technical skill, but vision. She has your hair, David observed. Your smile too. Alicia nodded. Madison is our thinker. She absorbs information like a sponge. Facts, figures, details most people would never notice. She's 2 grade levels ahead in mathematics. The watch, David said, understanding dawning. She knew exactly what I was wearing. Yes, that's Madison. And Marcus. Alicia's expression grew thoughtful. Marcus is our old soul. He sees through people, understands motivations and emotions beyond his years. He has my eyes, David said quietly. Yes, and your analytical mind. Alicia hesitated, then added, he asks about you sometimes. Wants to know where his determination comes from. What do you tell him? David looked stricken. The truth, that his father is a brilliant businessman who built something extraordinary through vision and persistence. She met his gaze directly. I've never spoken ill of you to them, David. What happens now? David finally asked. That depends on what you want, Alicia replied carefully. And what's best for the children? I want to know them, he said without hesitation. To be part of their lives. And if I say no? David's expression hardened slightly. I'd prefer not to make this a legal matter, Alicia. But they are my children. Is that what this is about? Asserting your legal rights? Claiming what's yours? Her voice remained steady despite her rising fear. Because if that's your approach, you'll destroy any chance of a real relationship with them. I just want to control the situation, she finished for him. That's always been your default, David. But these are children, not a corporate acquisition. You can't just decide you want them and expect everything to fall into place according to your timeline. He fell silent, considering her words. The David she had known would have pushed back immediately. But something had changed in him. What do you suggest, then? He asked, the question itself a concession she hadn't expected. Start slowly, Alicia said, seizing the opening. Meet them individually, in settings where they're comfortable. Get to know them as people, not as extensions of yourself. I'd like to start this weekend, David said, already reaching for his phone. This weekend is Maya's art exhibition, Alicia replied. She's been preparing for months. David looked up, surprise evident on his face. An art exhibition? At 7? The school showcases exceptional student work. Maya has 3 pieces in the show. Pride colored Alicia's voice. David was quiet for a moment, then asked, could I attend? Not to meet her formally, just to see her work. To begin understanding who she is. The request was so different from what Alicia had expected that she found herself nodding. Saturday at 7 o'clock. The school auditorium. She stood, signaling the end of their time. But David, please understand, this is Maya's night. Don't make it about you. I understand, he said, rising as well. Thank you, Alicia. As he turned to leave, Alicia called after him. David. He paused, looking back. They're not just Pierce heirs, she said quietly. They're people. With hearts and minds and dreams of their own. Remember that. Something shifted in his expression, a recognition, perhaps, of the magnitude of what he was undertaking. I'll remember. Saturday evening arrived with nervous energy. Maya had changed outfits 3 times, finally settling on a deep purple dress that complemented her auburn curls. He'll be there, won't he? Maya asked as Alicia helped pin back her hair. My father. The question caught Alicia off guard. She hadn't told the children about David's planned attendance. How did you know? she asked, meeting her daughter's eyes in the mirror. Maya shrugged. Marcus said he would come, that he wouldn't miss the chance to see what we can do. Yes, he might be there, she acknowledged carefully. But tonight isn't about him, Maya. It's about your incredible talent and hard work. I know, Maya said, her fingers nervously tracing the embroidery on her dress. But what if he doesn't like my paintings? The vulnerability in her daughter's voice broke Alicia's heart. One brief encounter with David, and already his opinion mattered to Maya. Your art isn't about pleasing others, Alicia reminded her gently. It's about expressing what you see and feel. And what you create is beautiful, Maya. Truly beautiful. At the exhibition, Alicia felt a surge of pride as she watched Maya explain her work to an elderly couple. Madison and Marcus had wandered off to examine other exhibits. She's extraordinary. The voice behind her sent a jolt of recognition down Alicia's spine. She turned to find David standing there, looking somewhat out of place in his perfectly tailored suit. Yes, she is, Alicia agreed. She sees the world in layers most people miss. Like you, David said quietly. You always notice things others overlooked. Before she could respond, Marcus appeared at David's elbow, studying him with that unervingly direct gaze. You came, he said. Not a question but an observation. Yes, your sister's work is impressive. Maya's the artist. Madison's the genius. I'm the musician. Marcus delivered this information matter-of-factly. At least that's what our teachers say. And what do you say? David asked, kneeling to meet Marcus at eye level. I think we're all still figuring it out. Labels are limiting. A smile tugged at David's lips. That's very insightful. Are you going to try to take us away from her? Marcus asked bluntly. No, David said firmly. I'm not going to take you away from your mother. She's done an amazing job raising you. Then what do you want? Marcus pressed. I want to know you. All of you. To be part of your lives, if you'll let me. We've been fine without you, Marcus pointed out. Yes, you have, David acknowledged. But that doesn't mean things couldn't be even better with me in your lives. Marcus studied him for a long moment. Maya wants you to like her art. Madison wants to know if your company has a research division. I haven't decided what I want from you yet. With that, he turned and walked away, leaving David still kneeling on the auditorium floor. As the event wound down, David approached Alicia again. Thank you for allowing me to be here tonight. It was Maya's night, Alicia replied. And you kept your word. You didn't make it about you. Could we talk about next steps? He asked. Perhaps over coffee sometime this week? Alicia hesitated, then nodded. Tuesday morning. There's a cafe near the school called Milo's. I can meet at 9:30 after I drop the children off. I'll be there, David promised, then added, Alicia, I know this is complicated, but I want to do right by them. By all of you. The sincerity in his voice gave her pause. The David she had married had been ambitious, driven, often ruthless in pursuit of his goals. But there had been moments of genuine warmth and connection too, moments she had almost forgotten in the bitterness of their ending. We'll see, was all she said, gathering the children to leave. As they walked to their car, Maya looked back over her shoulder. He liked my paintings, Mom. I could tell. Of course he did, sweetie. They're beautiful. Will we see him again? Madison asked, her analytical mind already working through the implications of David's appearance. Probably, Alicia admitted. Would you like that? Madison considered the question with characteristic thoroughness. His presence introduces variables I hadn't accounted for, but I'm curious about his work. The applications of quantum computing in his financial systems are supposedly groundbreaking. Alicia bit back a smile at her daughter's response. And you, Marcus? What do you think? Marcus was quiet for a moment, staring out the car window as the city lights blurred past. He's not what I expected, he finally said. He listened when I talked. Most adults don't really listen. The observation hung in the air as Alicia drove them home, her mind racing with the implications of the evening. David had surprised her, had surprised all of them. The question was whether this new, more thoughtful version of David Pierce would persist once the initial shock wore off, or if the controlling businessman would reemerge when things didn't go according to his plan. Tuesday would be the first test. The cafe buzzed with morning commuters when Alicia arrived. David sat waiting in a corner, a second cup already placed across from him. "Vanilla latte, 1 sugar," he said as she sat down. "You used to order that every morning." The fact that he remembered such a detail after 7 years caught her off guard. "Thank you. I've been thinking about what Marcus said," David began. "About what the children want from me. And," Alicia prompted, "I want to provide for them, Alicia. Not just financially. I want to support their interests, their talents." He leaned forward. "Maya's art could be nurtured with proper instruction. Madison's mind needs challenges beyond standard curriculum. And Marcus, his musical abilities should be developed with the best teachers." Alicia felt a familiar tension building. "They're already receiving excellent education, David. The school has specialized programs for gifted children. But they could have so much more," he insisted. "Private tutors, advanced programs, opportunities to travel. I can give them advantages you simply can't afford." And there it was, the David she remembered, seeing every problem as something money could solve. "Is that what you think they need most?" she asked quietly. "More advantages?" David looked confused. Of course, every parent wants to give their children the best possible start. The best start isn't always about expensive education or prestigious opportunities, Alicia countered. Sometimes it's about stability, consistency, knowing they're loved for who they are, not what they achieve. "I'm not suggesting otherwise," David said defensively. "But my resources could open doors for them." At what cost? Disrupting the life they've built? Creating confusion about their identity? Turning their routine upside down to accommodate your schedule? David's jaw tightened. "I'm their father, Alicia. I have rights." "And there it is," she said, disappointment washing over her. "This isn't about what they need. It's about what you want, what you believe you're entitled to." "That's not fair," he protested. "I'm trying to do the right thing." "Are you? Or are you approaching parenthood the same way you approach business? Identifying assets, calculating their potential value, and determining how to maximize your return on investment." The words hit their mark. David sat back, genuine surprise crossing his features. "Is that how you see me? As someone who views his own children as investments?" "I see someone who's used to solving problems with money and power," Alicia said more gently. "But David, being a parent isn't a problem to solve. It's a relationship to build. And relationships take time, patience, and the willingness to meet people where they are, not where you think they should be." David fell silent, turning her words over in his mind. For the first time since their reunion, Alicia saw a flicker of genuine self-doubt cross his features. "I don't know how to do this," he finally admitted, the confession clearly costing him. "I know how to run a multinational corporation. I know how to negotiate billion-dollar deals. But I don't know how to be a father to 3 children I just met." The vulnerability in his voice was so unexpected that Alicia felt her defenses soften slightly. "No one knows at first," she said. "I certainly didn't. Parenthood isn't something you master. It's something you figure out day by day, mistake by mistake." "You seem to have figured it out pretty well," David observed, glancing around the modest cafe. "They're remarkable children, Alicia. Happy, confident, talented. You've done that without my help, without all the advantages I could have provided." "They are remarkable," Alicia agreed, "but not because of expensive schools or exclusive opportunities. They're remarkable because they're loved, because they're secure in who they are, because they've been allowed to develop their own interests and talents without pressure to be something they're not." David nodded slowly, absorbing her words. "So where does that leave us? Where do I fit into their lives now?" It was the right question, perhaps the first truly right question he'd asked since discovering the triplets. Not about his rights or his plans, but about how he could fit into the life they'd already built. "Start by getting to know them," Alicia suggested. Not as potential heirs to your empire or extensions of your legacy, but as the unique individuals they are. Listen more than you talk. Ask questions about what matters to them, not what you think should matter. And practically speaking, David pressed, how do we arrange this? One afternoon a week, Alicia proposed. After school, you could pick them up and spend a few hours with them, individually at first, then together as they become more comfortable. No lavish gifts, no grand gestures. Just time and attention. One afternoon isn't much, David frowned. It's a beginning, Alicia countered. Trust has to be earned, David. With children as much as in business. He considered this, then nodded. All right, one afternoon a week, starting with individual visits. I can work with that. And David, Alicia added, her voice taking on a protective edge. Don't make promises you can't keep. If you start this, you need to follow through. Consistently. They've lived 7 years without a father. It would be worse to have one who appears and disappears at will. I understand, he said solemnly. I won't let them down. As they finalized the details of their arrangement, Alicia found herself studying the man across from her. The man she had once loved enough to marry. The man who had broken her heart with his single-minded ambition. There was something different about him now, a depth that hadn't been there before. Whether it was the shock of discovering his children or simply the maturity that comes with time, she couldn't be sure. What she did know was that the triplets deserved the chance to know their father, and David deserved the chance to know them, not as the billionaire CEO of Pierce Industries but simply as their dad. The weeks that followed established a new rhythm in their lives. True to his word, David began with individual visits, taking Maya to art galleries, discussing advanced mathematics with Madison, attending Marcus's piano recital with genuine interest. No flashy gifts, no attempts to buy their affection, just his time and undivided attention. It wasn't always smooth. There were awkward moments, misunderstandings, the occasional flash of David's controlling nature that Alicia had to gently redirect. But there were beautiful moments too. Maya's face lighting up when David recognized a technique in her painting without being told. Madison's excitement when he arranged for her to tour Pierce Industries' research lab. Marcus's quiet pride when David sat beside him on the piano bench and admitted he couldn't play a note himself. He's different than I expected, Alicia confessed to her sister over coffee one morning, 3 months into their new arrangement. More patient, more willing to listen. People can change, her sister replied, especially when something shakes their foundation. Finding out you have 3 children you never knew about would certainly qualify as foundation shaking. Alicia agreed with a small smile. That evening, as she helped the triplets with homework, her phone buzzed with a text from David. Need to talk. Important. Can I stop by after the kids are in bed? The message sent a flutter of anxiety through her chest. Had something changed? Was he going to push for more time, more control? When David arrived at 8:30, his expression was unreadable. He declined her offer of tea, pacing the small living room instead. I've been doing a lot of thinking, he began, his voice unusually hesitant. About the children. About our arrangement. Alicia felt her defenses rise. We agreed. I know what we agreed. He interrupted, then caught himself. Sorry, this isn't coming out right. He took a deep breath. I've realized something these past months. Spending time with them. With you. What's that? Alicia asked cautiously. That I was wrong. 7 years ago, and again when I first found out about the triplets. He stopped pacing, meeting her gaze directly. I thought I could solve this like a business problem. Identify what was missing, implement a solution, achieve the desired outcome. And now I understand that relationships don't work that way. That being a father isn't about providing advantages or securing a legacy. His voice softened. It's about being present, listening, supporting without controlling. Alicia studied him, searching for the ulterior motive, the hidden agenda. But all she saw was sincerity. And something else, something that reminded her of the man she had fallen in love with before ambition had hardened him. What are you saying, David? I'm saying I want to be a real father to them. not just an occasional visitor or a source of opportunities. He hesitated, then added, "And I want us to find a way to be real co-parents, not adversaries, not strangers who happen to share children." "That's a significant shift," Alicia said carefully. "I know." David smiled ruefully. "Marcus told me last week that I was evolving, but still had work to do. Out of the mouths of babes, right?" The comment startled a laugh from Alicia. "That sounds exactly like him. He also said that you still get sad sometimes, when you think no one is looking." David's voice grew serious again. "Is that true, Alicia?" The question caught her off guard. "Parenting alone isn't easy," she admitted, "even when you're surrounded by love." David nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I have a proposal, not a demand, not an ultimatum, just a possibility to consider." "I'm listening." Pierce Industries is establishing a new foundation focused on arts education for underprivileged children. We need a director, someone with both musical training and administrative experience. He met her gaze steadily. "Someone like you." Alicia blinked in surprise. "Are you offering me a job?" "I'm offering you an opportunity to use your talents beyond teaching elementary school music. The position comes with a significant salary increase, flexible hours to accommodate the children's schedules, and the chance to make a real difference in an area you care about." "And what's the catch?" Alicia asked, her natural wariness surfacing. "No catch," David replied. "The foundation will operate independently with its own board. You'd report to them, not to me. Your performance would be evaluated on the foundation's impact, not on our personal relationship." "Why?" The question was simple but loaded with meaning. David's expression softened. "Because you deserve it. Because you're brilliant at what you do. And yes, because it would make co-parenting easier if you weren't constantly struggling to make ends meet." He held up a hand as she began to protest. "That's not a criticism, Alicia. It's a recognition of reality. You've done an amazing job with limited resources. Imagine what you could do with more." Alicia was quiet for a long moment, turning the offer over in her mind. "I'd need to think about it." "Of course," David agreed immediately. "Take all the time you need. The position won't be filled until you've made your decision." As he prepared to leave, David paused at the door. "There's one more thing. Something I should have said months ago." He took a deep breath. "Thank you, Alicia, for raising our children with such love and wisdom, for giving them what I couldn't, for being the parent I'm still learning to be." The words hung in the air between them, sincere and unexpected. Alicia felt something shift inside her, not forgiveness exactly, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. "Good night, David," she said softly. "Good night, Alicia." As the door closed behind him, Alicia leaned against it, emotions swirling. The man who had just left was not the same man who had handed her divorce papers 7 years ago. Nor was he the controlling businessman who had appeared in her classroom 3 months earlier, determined to claim his rights. This David was something new, humbled by what he'd missed, changed by what he'd found, genuinely trying to be worthy of the remarkable children they had created together. 6 months later, the Pierce Family Foundation for Arts Education opened its doors, with Alicia Brooks as its executive director. The triplets divided their time between their mother's apartment and the guest house David had built on his estate, a compromise that gave them access to both parents while maintaining the stability of the life they'd always known. It wasn't perfect. There were still disagreements, still moments when David's controlling nature emerged, still times when Alicia's protective instincts flared. But there was something else too. A growing respect, a shared purpose, and occasionally, in quiet moments when the children weren't looking, a glimpse of the connection that had brought them together in the first place. One evening, after a foundation fundraiser that had exceeded all expectations, David walked Alicia to her car. The night air was cool, stars visible despite the city lights surrounding his estate. "You were amazing tonight," he said, genuine admiration in his voice. "The way you spoke about music education, you had everyone in that room ready to write checks twice as large as they'd planned." Alicia smiled, the excitement of the successful event still humming through her. It's easy to be passionate about something you believe in. I remember that about you, David said softly. Your passion, your conviction. It was one of the first things that drew me to you. The comment hung in the air between them, laden with memories of a past they rarely discussed. Alicia felt her heart quicken slightly. David, I miss you, Alicia, he said simply. Not just as the mother of my children, as the woman I fell in love with, the woman I should never have let go. She looked up at him, searching his face in the dim light. We're different people now. Yes, he agreed. Better people, I think. At least I hope I am. You are, she admitted. The man I married wouldn't have had the patience to sit through Madison's 2-hour explanation of quantum physics last weekend. David laughed. Or Maya's detailed critique of the brushwork in every painting at the museum. Or Marcus's piano recital where he played the same piece 12 different ways to show the emotional variations. Alicia added, smiling at the memory. Their laughter faded into a comfortable silence, the kind they hadn't shared in years. Would you have dinner with me? David asked suddenly. Not to discuss the children or the foundation. Just us. Alicia hesitated, years of protective barriers not easily dismantled. I don't know if that's a good idea. Probably not, he agreed with surprising candor. But I'd like to try anyway. No pressure, no expectations. Just dinner. Looking at him in that moment. Vulnerable, hopeful, so different from the man who had broken her heart. Alicia found herself nodding. All right, dinner. That dinner led to another and then another. Conversations that once would have devolved into arguments now became thoughtful exchanges. They rediscovered parts of each other they'd forgotten. David's dry wit that could make Alicia laugh until tears came. Alicia's insightful observations that challenged David's thinking in ways no one at his company dared. Mom's different when Dad's around, Maya observed one morning as she worked on a painting. She laughs more. Dad's different too, Madison added without looking up from her book. His cortisol levels appear lower. Less tension in his facial muscles. Marcus, ever the direct one, simply asked over breakfast, "Are you and Dad getting back together?" Alicia nearly choked on her coffee. "What makes you ask that? You look at each other the way Mrs. Rodriguez looks at her husband in the old photographs she keeps on her mantel," he said matter-of-factly. "And you both get that weird smile when you think no one's watching." "It's a valid hypothesis," Madison agreed. "The evidence suggests mutual attraction has been re-established." "I think it's romantic," Maya sighed dreamily. "Like in the stories where people find each other again after being apart." Alicia looked at her children, these perceptive, remarkable beings who saw far more than she'd given them credit for. "Your father and I are figuring things out," she said carefully. "We're different people than we were when we were married." "Better people," Marcus said, echoing David's words from weeks earlier. "We hope so," Alicia replied softly. When David proposed again, not with the grand gesture of their first engagement, but quietly, on a bench in the garden where they'd been watching the triplets play, Alicia wasn't entirely surprised. What did surprise her was her answer. "Yes," she said simply, "but on one condition." "Anything," David replied, his eyes never leaving hers. "We take it slowly. The children come first. And we don't lose ourselves this time, either of us." David nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "I promise." They married in a small ceremony in that same garden, with only the children, close family, and a few friends in attendance. No media, no business associates, none of the trappings that had characterized their first wedding. The decision to move into David's home came gradually, as the children spent more time there, as the commute between two households became increasingly impractical, as the walls between their separate lives slowly dissolved. "Are you sure about this?" David asked as they stood in the empty apartment, the last of their belongings packed and moved. "This was your home, your safe place." Alicia looked around the space where she had raised their children alone, where she had built a life from the ashes of their failed marriage. "It was," she agreed. "But home isn't about the walls around us. It's about the people we share it with." David took her hand, understanding the significance of what she was leaving behind. "I promise you won't regret this." "I know," she said, and realized she meant it. Their new life together wasn't without challenges. David still occasionally slipped into his controlling habits. Alicia sometimes retreated behind protective walls when conflicts arose. But they were learning to communicate, to compromise, to see each other clearly without the distortions of past hurts or future fears. One evening, as they sat on the terrace watching the triplets argue good-naturedly over a board game, David turned to Alicia. "Do you ever think about how differently things might have turned out if you'd told me about the pregnancy before the divorce?" Alicia considered the question carefully. "Sometimes, but I'm not sure we were ready then, either of us. You were building your empire. I was trying to find myself apart from you. Maybe we needed these years apart to become the people who could make this work." David nodded slowly. "A high price to pay." "Yes," she agreed, watching as Marcus triumphantly moved his game piece, causing Maya to groan dramatically while Madison recalculated her strategy. "But look what we gained." Sometimes life's greatest treasures come disguised as our greatest challenges. Sometimes the people we think we know completely can surprise us with their capacity for growth. And sometimes, in the most unexpected places, like a chance encounter in a Rolls-Royce showroom, we discover that second chances aren't just possible. They're waiting for us to be brave enough to embrace them. If the story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever experienced an unexpected second chance? Did you have the courage to take it? Remember that sometimes life's most beautiful chapters begin with the words, "I was wrong," and "Let's try again." Until next time, this is Mr. Harrison, reminding you that true wealth isn't measured in dollars and cents, but in the lives we touch and the love we share.